All right, let's talk about some horror movies, why don't we? I thought this could be an interesting idea for a video, which is so I've always had this kind of blind spot when it comes to horror movies. Growing up, I never watched them as a kid. My parents were very not into that stuff, so I never really started watching horror movies until I was an adult. And I've mostly kept up with horror films since I've been an adult, like the newer stuff. But there's just so many movies that I haven't watched from earlier because I never really grew up with them. Well, I have already gone back and watched my fair share. My fiance Stephanie and I had spent October watching some of the horror movies that I had never seen before. And so, some of these are classics, some of these are kind of cheesy ones that have came out not too long ago. But either way, I thought it could be a fun video to just share with you my thoughts on, I think the title is going to be called 10 horror classics that I had never seen before. It's a bit of a misleading title because a few of these might not be classics, and actually a couple of these I have seen before. I just saw them a while ago and still wanted to talk about. So yeah, that's the long intro to this video. Now let's get into the list. Starting off with 3 movies in a row. I watched the first 3 Friday the 13th movies. I have seen the first one before, but the second 2 I had never seen before. So, they're fun. Again, my reaction to having never seen them, I definitely think that they're kind of your cookie cutter slasher movie. They all, I don't want to say are rehashes of the same thing, because they're not. There are different aspects in each one, but they are also, at the end of the day, kind of ultimately the same thing. I do like these compared to some other slashers, and that I think some slasher movies almost like the characters do just feel like stock characters to be killed. I feel like these movies put a little bit more effort into it. Not a ton. They still are characters meant to be killed. That is still most of their roles, but I feel like some of the characters do still feel like, even if they're over the top and kind of cheesy, actual characters for me. So yeah, these movies are, they're Friday the 13th, and we know what they are. That they're very fun. I also watched Rosemary's Baby for the first time. This is definitely in the classic category. We're still talking about it. It was this 1968 movie, so there you go. And it's still a really well-known movie and a really strong one. I really enjoyed Rosemary's Baby. I thought there was a lot of good stuff in this one. If you've never seen it, it's I don't even know what I could say, without spoiling it, because it really does play out almost like a drama through a large part of it. But essentially, it's Rosemary is having a baby, and there's weird things going on with people and what they're doing, and it's such a fascinating ride of how trapped Rosemary feels, and you really feel trapped with her in this scenario. Quite frankly, I think just the idea of having a baby in general sounds terrifying to me. I think that, just pregnancy as a whole is already kind of a terrifying concept when you really think about it. And then when you think about, things going wrong, people giving you drinks that you don't know what's in it for, quote unquote, the baby, your doctor can't be trusted. There's so much, interesting stuff in here. It is a movie that I knew the ending watching it, so, I did have that spoiled, but it didn't really, I think it probably changed the experience, but I still think it was a really enjoyable experience. So yeah, definitely check that one out if you haven't already. Like I said, almost more of a drama than it is a horror movie, but definitely is, it builds tension and builds sort of suspense, which is what I like, even if it's not necessarily your traditional horror film. My one thought, I'll give a quick, I'm not going to spoil most of these. I'll give a quick spoiler warning for Rosemary's Baby, though. Skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to, or I guess a minute if you don't want me to spoil it. But it is a little funny how, it all ends with basically, her husband turned on her because he can get, a bigger role in a play. Not even, starring in a movie or something. It's I think you could have negotiated maybe a little better there. That's the best you can get out of the Devil Cult is a bigger role in the play. Hey, actors, they're competitive. I suppose I get it. That kind of, some of the stuff at the end is a little bit funny, if you really think about it, but you don't really think about it because the whole thing was so horrifying. So yeah, that's a really good one, I think. One I didn't care for too much was The Hills Have Eyes, which is a film that, it's a 2006, I watched a 2006 movie, just to be clear, not the original Wes Craven movie. It's one that the concept I think is really cool. Part of me wants to go back and watch the Wes Craven one now, because, I think the concept does really work, although I've heard that one's not very good either. But this is just not a movie that worked for me. I kind of found it to kind of really fall in, the torture porn aspect of horror, in my opinion. It went so hard in the middle of the movie, and also was very slowly paced through a large other large parts of it. There was definitely a lot of, walking around, a lot of, stuff like that, which, again, it would have been okay had I maybe not been, kind of just, I didn't love the middle part. I think there are people who will enjoy that stuff, but yeah, not really my thing personally, but I do like the concept. I get why it was remade. It was remade into a movie that's not my thing. Then I watched Carrie, which very much is my thing, and this is one of those movies that when I watched it, it's like, why have I waited this long to watch it? Because I really like Stephen King stuff, although I've never read Carrie. And I really, I like when Stephen King stuff gets turned into movies, but I've never watched Carrie. So it's a weird thing that I've never watched or read it. I finally watched it, and yeah, it's really good. It's really fun. Of course, I should have watched it already. Again, Stephen King, I think, has, and I don't know what's changed between the book or the movie. I haven't read the book, but I feel like in a lot of King's stuff, he really understands that the best kind of horror stuff isn't about just these spooky aspects of things going on. It is about the characters. Characters matter first overall. That's like a football thing. Matter most overall, certainly. And I feel like Carrie really, again, the characters, especially the character of Carrie, really strong. But even the side characters and the characters that are the quote unquote bullies, is it a touch over the top? Yeah. But like, it still works for me. I still kind of get where they're coming from. So yeah, that's definitely a really fun one. A bit slow paced at times, I will say. And again, it's one where like, how can you not know where it ends? Like everyone knows how Carrie ends. So like, there's only so much you can do with that. But at the same time, it's even with that, I still found it to be very fun. And again, a lot of creative choices with some of the camera work and stuff. They were going for it with it, and it worked for me. I also watched Audition for the first time. This is a 1999 Japanese movie, which is often, I didn't realize this when I watched it, but it's often considered one of the better horror movies ever made. The Criterion had their list of like Japanese horror movies, which if I'm not too familiar with American horror movies, I'm definitely not going to be too familiar with Japanese horror movies. So trying to familiarize myself with some of them, I'm like, oh, Audition, this seems like a fun concept. Another one that's like, it's kind of, you could almost say it's more like a drama or even like melodrama, and then it very much gets into horror towards the end. So it's kind of two different movies that both also blend together well and both really work for me. I mean, this one it's a really interesting watch. It does go very hard, but in my opinion, in this movie, it kind of felt like it was worth it, and the movie earned it. There's no real way to explain that. It felt like it was worth it for me, in my opinion. And I think that again, the character work and how strong these characters were throughout. If you have not, I'm going to assume there's some of you that haven't seen it, so I'll explain it. It's a movie in which a guy loses his wife, and then eventually, after some time has passed, and he's ready to start dating again, he has a friend who works in the movie industry who says, here's what we'll do. We'll send out a casting call, and, we'll have a woman, and you can kind of describe your dream woman, and we can get that demographic, and you'll have woman come through, give an audition, and then you can, you can pick out which one you want and then try to talk to her and try to date her that way. And then that happens. That's kind of the first part of the movie. And then, this is getting it's plot details, I guess I should say. But it's maybe the woman that he chooses it's not everything that she seems. That's probably the best way to phrase it. So, yeah, a really strong movie. I would recommend it, although I will say, if you're particularly squeamish, this might not be the one for you. Just going to throw that out there. I also watched A Nightmare on Elm Street, which this is another one where I have to say there's an asterisk. I have seen this before, just rewatched it, but I hadn't seen it since I was like, listen, my last name's Krueger. I have to watch a Freddy Krueger movie. So like when I was 19, I watched it. But 10 years later, watched it again, and yeah, it's really cool. I love the practical effects still just really work, don't they? I mean, like the bathtub scene is so cool. Like so much of it is just so fun. It's just full of life, this entire movie. It is one that, again, I do feel like the characters matter. I get them. They're not like the most in-depth characters I've ever seen in movies, but they work. They work for the film. And Fred Krueger, it's always funny how they call him Fred Krueger in this one, but Fred Krueger, how that his origin story, it works. And I think just the idea of you can't sleep or he's gonna get you, and how do you not sleep? You're gonna sleep eventually. You can try to delay it as much as possible, and that's kind of what's fun, is you can try to delay it, but you can't delay it forever. So yeah, that's Nightmare on Elm Street. It's great. That's the one where if you're watching this on Halloween, you're looking for a movie to throw on like at a party or with some friends over. I think that's a good one. Then I watched The Conjuring, which is, this one's not, it's not from that long ago. It's only 2013. I know there's people who really love this film. Was not one that fully worked for me. Again, I was 18 when this came out. I missed it then because I was still not really into horror at that point. Finally checked it out, and it's just, I don't know what it is about, like, I think supernatural horror, it really has to, like, I mean, I guess probably there's a couple things. For one, I just wasn't that into really any of the characters in this one. So, like, if you don't really care about the characters that much, for me, I need that if I'm going to be really into a movie, even if it is a spooky ghost movie. And while there were certain effects and certain parts that I did find effective, I think another issue with a movie like this for me is, like, I overthink these things. I think it's the issue, because like I'll watch these like ghost movies and you'll have it where like all the pictures fall off the wall and everyone gets scared, or like the demon shows up for a minute and then the demon goes away, and I'm always like, well, what was the point? Like, why were you doing that? Like, what's going, like, demon, are you just trying to like go, ooh, spooky, spooky? Like, is there I need like some sort of internal logic with the demon. I know that's so much not the point of these movies, but like, that's kind of the part of why it loses me a little bit. And I don't really believe in ghosts, and I'm not religious, so like that kind of horror movie doesn't really do much for me. Although then I watched Poltergeist, which is, I actually watched this earlier, but it's going to be counterintuitive because everything I said about that movie, you could also argue about Poltergeist, but I think the fact that it kind of doesn't really tell you what's going on until later works for me. There is that question of what exactly is going on, so even though you could argue they're very similar movies, I think part of why I like Poltergeist more is just, it feels, there's just this, I think, there's just this vibe to it that I just really enjoyed. It has the, there's the whole, did Steven Spielberg direct this movie? It feels like he did. It feels like a Spielberg movie. It has that kind of Spielberg charm to it. So even though, like I said, sort of the, the supernatural aspects of it, still, I don't think this was ever going to be my favorite movie, but like, yeah, it's still a fun one. It's still definitely worth checking out, I would say. So, again, I loved some of the, like, the practical effects and stuff, although the tree effects didn't always it'll work totally well for me, I have to say. But a lot of it was fun. Some of the digital effects certainly do not hold up, but I did like even like this is a small thing, but like, so there's a point when like there's a clear digital effect that looks very cheesy of like, it's like, I think it's like a laser or something like shooting into someone. It's like, okay, cheesy effect, right? But they did do something where they also like added, like in real life, they added like some wind in it, so that way it like made it kind of feel like it is still part of the world that we're seeing. Little things like that did help it for me. So yeah, I don't know. Again, it's a vibes movie. It's a very fun watch. It's not one that I think fully worked for me the way it does for others, but still one I would give a positive review for. I actually watched this during the hurricane, and in the last 15 minutes the power went out, but I was, I had it on my phone as well. So we Stephanie and I watched the last 15 minutes on my phone before finishing it. So that's how we did that. Finally, last on this list is The Strangers, which is a movie that I feel like has wildly different opinions. There's people who hate this movie, and there's people who love this movie. I'll be honest, the first 30 minutes of this movie like scared the hell out of me. I think that's really, because kind of like what I'm saying about some of the supernatural stuff not really working for me, because I'm like, well, what are you doing? Seeing the home invasion stuff and seeing like, the shot of the person in the mask walking behind her, like, early on, which I won't get too much more into it if you haven't seen it. I guess I should describe what the movie is. It's a very basic premise. It's essentially that there is a couple who have gotten into a fight after a proposal that doesn't go very well, and then all of a sudden strangers show up and are up to something, and you don't know exactly what. Like I said, that initial thing where the masked man walks in, terrifying, absolutely terrifying, and the fact that there's no noise or anything, it just happens. Like, I think it's so well done. Absolutely, this is a movie that there's so many decisions that were seemingly just for plot purposes, and it really does get silly towards the end of this movie. So, like, I get I get why people don't like this movie at all and say this is just a bad movie. For me, it still captures part of that feeling of like the thing that I'm most terrified of, I think, is like someone showing up to your like house and like being up to something. I think that's horrifying. Like, thank God nobody like rang the doorbell when I was watching this movie or something, or I would have been freaked out. It's part of what makes movies interesting, in my opinion, is like so much of it comes to what you bring to the table. And like, I think by the second half of this movie, I was almost like, yeah, this is boring, but like, what if someone did show up? That would be scary. So like, part of it is just that. It just kind of, get you to think something. So yeah, again, I totally get why people don't love this movie. It's still not one that I'm not sure if I'm going to watch again, but like, I'm really glad I watched it once. I think it certainly was effective at what it was trying to do for me, even if it did completely lose me by the end. So yeah, those are my thoughts. So those are my thoughts on some of these horror movies. Yeah, let me know what did you think of this video. Is there what are your thoughts on any of the movies that I have mentioned? Is there one that, hearing what I say, maybe you'd recommend? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from ya, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.